All right, let's dive into motivational interviewing today. Um, have you ever wanted to help someone change, but felt like you were pushing them?
Yeah.
MI is all about empowering people to change, and it can be super effective even when people are hesitant.
What's wild is that MI actually started in addiction treatment back in the 80s.
Wow, so not where you'd expect. How did that happen?
Well, therapists noticed something really interesting.
Okay.
They noticed that when they encouraged patients to talk about their own reasons for changing,
Yeah,
it actually reduced resistance and it increased motivation, which was a huge discovery.
that makes sense. So instead of telling people what to do, MI helps them find their own reasons.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be exploring in this deep dive.
Awesome. So first, what is motivational interviewing? What's the definition?
MI is a style of communication that's collaborative and goal-oriented. It focuses on helping someone strengthen their own motivation to change.
So it's more like a partnership than just telling someone what to do.
Right. The practitioner and the individual work together, and the practitioner acts as a guide.
I've heard this cool analogy comparing it to a rafting trip,
Oh, yeah, it's a great one.
where the practitioner is like the river guide who's there to offer support.
Right.
But ultimately, the client is the one doing the paddling and making the decisions.
Love it. That really captures the spirit of MI.
So how does the river guide actually help the client navigate the river of change?
Well, there's this set of core skills in MI that we call ORS plus I.
ORS plus I. Okay, break that down for me.
It stands for open-ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, summaries, and information exchange.
Okay, I can see why an acronym is useful there.
Yeah.
So let's start with open-ended questions. Why are they so important?
Open-ended questions encourage the client to explore their thoughts and feelings more deeply.
Instead of just giving yes or no answers.
Right. So instead of asking, "Are you feeling stressed?" you might ask, "Tell me about what's causing you stress lately."
Ah, I see. So you're encouraging them to really open up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now what about affirmations? Are those just like compliments?
They are similar, but affirmations go a little deeper.
Okay.
It's about genuinely acknowledging their strengths, their efforts, their values.
So it's more about their internal quality.
Yes. It's about recognizing what they're bringing to the table.
So you're saying things like you're showing real determination instead of I'm impressed with you.
Exactly. You're highlighting their internal strengths and building their self-belief.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about reflective listening? What's that all about?
Reflective listening is about actively trying to understand the client's perspective. It's like holding up a mirror.
So they can see themselves more clearly.
Yes. And there are actually different types of reflections.
Oh, like what?
You can have simple reflections, which basically restate what the client said, or you can have complex reflections.
Let's go deeper.
Exactly. They capture the emotions or meaning behind what they're saying.
So if a client says, I know I should quit smoking, but it's hard, a simple reflection might be, it sounds like you've struggled to quit.
Perfect example. And then a complex reflection might be, you're feeling discouraged and maybe even a bit hopeless.
Wow, yeah, that gets to a much deeper level.
And that's what makes reflective listening so powerful in MI.
Okay, we've covered open-ended questions, affirmations, and reflective listening. How about summaries?
Summaries help to bring together the key points of the conversation and make sure everyone's on the same page.
Okay, so it's like, here's what we've talked about so far.
Exactly. It can help to move the conversation forward and make sure nothing's been missed.
Got it. And before we move on, can you quickly explain information exchange?
Of course. It's about providing information in a way that's neutral and respectful.
So not like a lecture,
No, it's more about offering information to help the client make their own decisions.
like, here's what we know about the health risks of smoking, but not pushing them.
Right. It's about empowering them with information, not dictating what they should do.
This is really helpful. So the big takeaway here is that MI is about helping someone find their own reasons for changing.
Absolutely. It's about guiding them towards their own internal motivation.
This has been super insightful. I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into this.
Me too. There's so much more to explore in the world of MI. Welcome back. Let's keep exploring motivational interviewing.
All right, so last time we talked about the core skills of MI, the ORS plus.
Right.
I'm curious about how those skills are used to elicit something called change talk.
Oh, yeah. Change talk is a crucial part of MI.
Sounds kind of technical.
It refers to any statements that suggest someone is moving towards change.
Okay, so it's like listening for clues that they're ready to make a change.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this acronym, DARN.
Another one.
I know, but it's helpful. It stands for desire, ability, reason, and need.
Okay. Break it down for me.
So desire is about wanting to change, like I wish I had more energy.
And ability is like, I could exercise more if I made it a priority.
Exactly. Reason would be something like if I ate healthier, I'd probably feel better.
The need is more like, I need to lose weight for my health.
Perfect. You got it.
So how do practitioners actually draw out this change talk?
They use those ORs plus I skills we talked about. Open-ended questions, reflections, summaries.
So they're actively guiding the conversation.
Right. They might ask something like, what do you like about your current lifestyle?
And then reflect back. It sounds like you value flexibility.
Exactly. And then follow up with, what are some things you don't like about it?
Oh, I see. So you're getting them to think about both sides.
Yeah. And as they hear their own reasons for wanting to change it, can really boost their motivation.
It's like they're discovering their own path.
That's a great way to put it. MI is all about helping them find that path.
This is fascinating. It's like a dance between the practitioner and the client.
I love that analogy. It really is like a dance.
You have to be attuned to their cues and adapt your approach.
And one important thing to be aware of is something called sustain talk.
Sustain talk. What's that?
It's the opposite of change talk. It's those statements that favor keeping things the same.
So like, I don't have time to exercise.
Exactly. And instead of arguing, a good MI practitioner would acknowledge that feeling.
Like, it sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's about validating their experience.
This is making so much sense. So instead of forcing change, MI helps the client find their own way.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about how MI is actually used in the real world.
Yeah, let's get into some real-life examples. I know we mentioned a few earlier.
Right. We talked about things like addiction recovery and health behavior change.
I'd love to hear about a specific case study to see how it all comes together.
Okay, there's this great example in one of the sources about a client named Russell.
Okay, tell me about Russell.
So Russell was mandated to attend counseling after a positive drug test at work.
Oh, so he was probably pretty resistant to the whole thing.
He was. He didn't see his drug use as a problem.
So how did the counselor approach him?
Well, instead of lecturing him, the counselor started by offering him a cup of coffee.
That's nice. It's a simple gesture of hospitality.
Exactly. It helped to create a more welcoming environment.
And then what?
The counselor asked Russell what he knew about the employee assistance program.
So they were genuinely curious about his perspective.
Right. And when Russell expressed surprise at being caught, the counselor just reflected back his feelings.
Without judgment.
Exactly. And from there, the counselor used open-ended questions to explore Russell's life.
So they talked about his work, his family, his hopes for the future.
Yeah. And eventually, the counselor asked about his drinking habits in a broader context of lifestyle choices.
That's smart. They were gradually guiding the conversation towards the topic of substance use.
And as they talked, Russell started to share some of his own concerns about his drug use.
Wow. So he was coming to his own realizations.
He was. The counselor didn't have to force anything.
This is a really powerful example. It shows how MI can help people uncover their own motivation for change.
It really does. Okay, we've covered a lot in this part. Change talk, sustain talk, and a real-world case study.
I'm really excited to see what's next. All right, welcome back to our deep dive on motivational interviewing. We've covered so much ground already.
We have. We've talked about the ORS plus I skills change talk and even saw it in action with Russell.
Right. Now, I'm curious about how MI handles resistance, because it seems like that could be a tricky part.
It can be, but addressing resistance is super important in MI.
Yeah, you can't just ignore it.
Exactly. And one of the sources emphasizes that it's all about respecting the client's autonomy.
So you're not trying to force them to see things your way.
Right. MI is about meeting them where they are and responding with empathy, not confrontation.
It makes sense, because if you push someone too hard, they're likely to push back even more.
Exactly. So if a client says something like, I don't need to change my diet, I'm fine, instead of arguing, a good MI practitioner might say, it sounds like you're feeling defensive about your eating habits, and that's understandable.
Ah, so you're validating their feelings instead of dismissing them.
Exactly. And then you might follow up with an open-ended question like, what do you enjoy about your current diet?
Okay, so you're gently guiding the conversation towards exploring their perspective.
Right. And that can help to lower their defenses and create a space for change.
So it's about creating a more conducive environment rather than trying to force change.
That's a great way to put it. Now, another strategy for dealing with resistance is shifting focus.
Shifting focus. How does that work?
So let's say a client is really resistant to attending a support group.
Okay.
Instead of trying to convince them, you might shift the conversation to something like, What are some things you're already doing that are helping you?
So you're acknowledging their efforts and strengths.
Exactly. It can help to move the conversation in a more positive direction.
Got it. Now, what about emphasizing personal choice?
That's really important too. It's about reminding the client that they're in control.
So you might say something like, I understand you're not ready to quit drinking right now, and that's okay.
Exactly. It's about respecting their autonomy and letting them know you're there to support them when they're ready.
That's really powerful. So once someone is ready to change, how do you help them actually make a plan?
Well, one of the sources outlines a five-step process called SOARS.
SOARS. Okay, another acronym.
I know, but they're helpful, right?
Yeah, they are. What does SOARS stand for?
It stands for set goals, sort options, arrive at a plan, reaffirm commitment, and support change.
Okay, let's break that down.
So first you set goals, which means working with the client to identify what they want to change.
And those goals should be meaningful to them, not just imposed by someone else.
Exactly. Then you sort options, which means exploring different strategies for achieving those goals.
So brainstorming different possibilities.
Right. And then you arrive at a plan, which is where you create a concrete action plan with specific steps.
Okay, so moving from ideas to action.
Exactly. Next, you reaffirm commitment, which is about making sure the client is fully on board with the plan.
So addressing any doubts or concerns they might have.
Right. And finally, you support change, which means providing ongoing encouragement and resources.
So it's like being a cheerleader and a coach throughout the whole process.
Exactly. And through it all, you're using those core MI skills we talked about to guide and empower the client.
This is all so fascinating. It's really amazing how MI brings together so many different elements.
It really does. And it's not just about techniques, it's about embodying a spirit of empathy and collaboration.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into motivational interviewing, I hope you're feeling inspired.
Me too. MI is more than just a set of tools. It's a way of being with others and empowering them to change.
And the great thing is that anyone can learn and use these principles.
Absolutely. So go out there and try it, listen with curiosity, reflect with empathy, and empower others to find their own path.
That's a great message to end on. And until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.